Hey everybody, Chris here with Tomorrow Mastery. Today we're going to be talking about compound interest and why you need to start investing today. Warning, math ahead. We're going to have some examples using some numbers. Don't worry, because I have a bachelor's degree in math, so I'll walk you right through it. If you are a fan of math, go ahead and leave in the comments that you love math. Otherwise, leave in the comments why you don't like math. So let's jump right into it. Simple versus compound interest. So we got two examples here. Example on the left is a simple interest where you say you borrow $100 from your friend Bob for 2 days with a 10% daily simple interest. At the end of those 2 days, you're going to need to pay back $120. Pretty straightforward. On the right side, you have compound interest. Say if you borrow $100 from your friend Barb for 2 days with a 10% daily compound interest, you're going to have to pay back $121. Now, the explanation is actually quite straightforward. For the simple interest, you're paying interest on the principal or the initial borrowed amount. Whereas on the compound interest side, you are also paying interest on the interest that you've accrued. Kind of like this. So let's look at an extreme example of why compound interest matters. Now on the left side, you have option A. And this, by the way, this example, if you've heard of or you've seen something like this before, you may not be as surprised, but if this is your first time, you will be very surprised at the results. Anyways, so option A, we have if you were to get $10,000 every day for 30 days, what would you have at the end of the 30 days? Versus option B, where you take 1 cent, 1 penny, and then you double that quantity every day for 30 days. So if you pull out a quick calculator or just wait for the next slide, you'll see that option A, for 30 days at $10,000, you'll have $300,000. So it's quite a good option. But if you understand the power of compound interest and you take option B, what you will have at the end of 30 days, you will have $5,368,709. So wow, yeah, that's quite a big difference, isn't it? So this leads to a very famous quote from Albert Einstein that says, "Compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world. He who understands it earns it. He who doesn't pays it." Now, from the previous example, you can see why it is such a big deal and why someone as smart as Albert Einstein thinks that compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world. Now, obviously, that example was not very realistic. It was just there to prove a point. So let's start looking at some real life numbers. So because we are talking about some investment opportunities, let's look at what the historical stock market returns. Now, in the last 30 years, taking from January 1st of 1989 through December 31st of 2019, we get our average annual return of 12.13% per year. Now, of course, in that time period, we need to adjust for inflation, which is roughly about 2% per year. So it drops down to 9.41% a year. And again, we need to adjust that amount because those quantities are using simple interest. And as we already proved that there is potentially quite a big difference between simple interest and compound interest. So that's what the annualized returns means. So we'll skip all that math, and that's what it comes down to is 7.94, which is roughly 8%. So what we're going to do is we'll run through some examples using a 8% annualized return per year, and we'll look at what kind of investments we could do for the next 30 years. So here's a sample investment over the next 30 years. And I put in some, arbitrary numbers. We could adjust these as whatever you feel would work for you. I picked $2,500 a year. It comes out to about $50 a month. And then at a 8% annualized rate. After 30 years, the principal of the total amount of money we put in is $75,000. But what does that actually come out to once we consider the compound interest and the compounding power over 30 years? That is $283,208 versus the $75,000 that you put in. That's an additional 2.8 times the amount you put in. So again, if you look at those numbers, over time, it makes quite a big difference. Now, another thing to consider when you're looking at investment over a long period of time and compound interest is that, say, if you would want to wait before you start, what would that actually do to your returns? So let's take another example. Again, over the next 30 years, and again, same thing, we'll be investing $2,500 per year. And this time, we're just going to invest for 10 years straight, and then we'll stop. So if you start today in 2020, after 10 years, you stop putting in money, you would have put in the principal of $25,000, and after 30 years, you will have $105,000, $681. Now, let's say you don't start today. You start 5 years from today. So 5 years later, you'll have put in 16% less time. And because our brains work kind of linearly, kind of like in a simple interest, it's difficult to comprehend the power of compound interest. And that's why they have compound interest calculators online. Anyways, so if you start just 5 years later, you would actually lose 25% of what you would have made if you started today. And then to emphasize the point even more, if you start 10 years later and still have a full 20 years of compounding versus 30 years of compounding, you'll have 33% less time of the compounding effect. What would happen is you would have 44% less money than you would have if you just started today. Almost half, even though it's only a third of the time gone. So remember, what you want to do, you want to invest in stocks for the long term is a major consideration. And going back into the historical stock market returns, it's really important to note that historical data and percentages returns is not indicate what's going to happen in the future. No one can tell what's going to happen with the stock market, and that's why you should always invest in stocks for the long term. Second thing to remember is to invest early to benefit from the power of compound interest. Again, eighth wonder of the world. And to get you a head start on that, Webull has a promotion at the moment where if you sign up, you will get 3 free stocks valuing up to $1,600 each. Go ahead, there's a link to that below. And finally, remember to squash that like button and subscribe if you like this content and would like to see more. So disclaimer, I'm not a financial advisor. Please do your own research and consider this information for educational purposes and just for entertainment as well. Hope you have a nice day, and I'll catch you next time.